And we're on. So hello, everyone. I am very, very excited today because I have on the call here with me Dr. Jorge Luis Valdes, a founding member of the Colombia's Medellín drug cartel. And you also worked with people like Pablo Escobar and Manuel Noriega, among others. You spent $1 million a month on corruption. And by the way, I love your quote that you said for the Vlad's TV interview. You said, today we call it lobbyist. I call it corruption. That's one of my favorite. And that's exactly right. So you made hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and ultimately quit and got a PhD in New Testament studies and ethics. So that's very good. And basically changed your life around. And I've read your book, which is very exciting. So I am very excited today to also hear your story. And thank you very much for coming to the interview, Doctor.
My pleasure. My pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, so now I've met you just a few weeks ago through LinkedIn, and you sent me your book, actually two books. One is called Coming Clean, and the other one is called The Narco Mindset. So I feel like I know you pretty well for the time being. And your podcast is also called The Narco Mindset. So can you explain what Narco Mindset is exactly and who can benefit from it? Who is it for?
When I wrote the book, Coming Clean, it became a bestseller and I was talking all over the country. And I realized two things that were really critical. Number one was that, to be totally transparent, at the beginning of speaking, I was beginning to enjoy my story again. It was almost like I was reliving it by telling it. But then I would get tremendous guilt and I would feel really, really bad about it. So I quit. One day I quit. I mean, I was one of the most sought after speakers in America. I was making a lot of money speaking. None of it has ever gone to me. Everything I make from the books, speaking, goes to buy books to send to prisoners so they can find hope, they can find redemption. So I stopped. Then years later, when finally my daughter is getting ready to go to college this year, well, she's going to college, we're driving her next Sunday. We decided that my wife decided that it was about time that I get back speaking again. She felt that I had a lot to give back to the world. And so when I wrote Narco Mindset, my newest book, basically what I wanted to do was, I'm tired of telling a drug story. That's why I don't do any more podcasts where they just want me to tell all about my past and how old I was. If you want to know that, read it in a book. Or if you want to be entertained better, watch Narcos. But I tell parts of it, or when I tell it, is to send a message. What Narco Mindset does is extrapolates principles out of my narco life. When people look at me and they ask me, well, why is it that you look at the world so different? Why is it, for example, you have no fear? Why is it that you think you can achieve anything you want to achieve? And I tell them that it's all because of my mindset. And one of the problems that I see in the world today is, even among very wealthy leaders, even among up-and-coming executives, everybody struggles with something. You all know that. And as a result of that, it's nothing but a byproduct of their mindset. So, for example, I don't know what the word "I can't" is. In my vocabulary, I changed that word for "how can I?" So when people say, why have you no fear of this virus? I said, well, first of all, for me, as a Christian, is that I feel that I'm going to die the day God wants me to go, and it's done. My time here is over with. But just as a regular human being, is because what is the opposite of fear? Love. So what do we have to fear? We cling on to our lives, which is nothing but a fleeting moment. I mean, it was thousands of us in the cartel. It's only 3 or 4 of us alive. People that I grew up with that were very, very powerful and very wealthy, they're all dead. And I look at it and I'm like, your life comes and your life goes. So whatever you got left, try to make an impact. So I decided to write about how I look at the world. It is not important what you see. When you look at something, it's irrelevant what you're looking at. What's important is through what lenses are you looking at it. So as I look at the things that create what I call a narco mindset, a never powerful mindset, it's just a catchy word, but basically it's a mindset that has no fear, a mindset that said, I came out of prison, twice convicted drug dealer, and my counselor said, why are you going home? You're a legend here. Everybody respects you. Everybody loves you. You got food. Who's going to hire you? And I'm like, what do you mean who's going to hire me? And I was, in part, I was joking with him. I said, look, the Bible said that I'm going to be granted favor before kings. And he's like, well, there's no more kings in America. I said, yeah, there is. The president of the United States is a king. And he said, well, it'll be a cold day in hell before you're in the White House. Well, 3 years later, I had White House clearance. So my mindset is informed. My world is informed by my mindset. The fact that I have been shot at 28 times. I suffered tremendous tortures in prison. And I fell off an airplane at 5,000 feet. And I'm still alive. So I have nothing to fear. I'm going to live every day as it is the last day of my life to the fullest. And I'm going to try very, very hard to make a difference in the world. Because I believe when the pages of history are written, history only remembers those not that have great businesses, great wealth. If you ask my children, and they're pretty well read, very educated, my younger kids, who's the Vanderbilts? Who were the barons that built America? They have no clue. But if you ask them, who's Mother Teresa? They do. Who's Gandhi? They do. Right? And these were not very powerful people. They were not, Mother Teresa was just a little nun in, the ends of the earth in Calcutta. But she believed that she could, and she did, by loving the unlovable, that she could change the world. And at the end of the day, I think that that's all that really matters, is what an impact can you make in this world? And will history remember your name? I guarantee you, it's not going to remember you because you're the wealthiest man in the world. I mean, if you look at the royal family right now, how many people can even name who was one of the first, kings? I mean, you don't. But you remember those that are out there, create Mandela, that are out there creating a difference, changing the world for good, and changing, Martin Luther King, changing the world through actions that are peaceful. But we have it all messed up now. We believe that we can protest, we can burn down places, we can do all this, and we're going to make a difference. And to me, it's a joke. Nothing's going to change. You keep. I tell people, listen, if people don't like you, I don't care what you do. I don't care how much protest, how much you march. You can march till Jesus comes. If they don't like you, they're not going to like you, period. So you can't force people to like you, but you can't make them respect you. And that's what we miss, what I call miss the boat.
So where do you think that you have acquired this mindset? Was it from your father, from your parents, or along the way in your businesses?
I think our mindset is created, it's developed throughout time and through experiences. I don't think that the mindset is something that is genetic. Mm-hmm. I think that is your environment. I got a lot from my father. I wrote a book called Narco Mindset Journal. It's a 12 weeks program that will help people create that mindset in their business, in their family, and, with their children, which are three critical components of each of our lives. So, for example, my father at the age of 10 kept telling us, George, you got no control in life whether you're sick or healthy. No control whether you're rich or poor. No control whether you're dead or alive. The only thing in this world you have absolute control is your word. Only you can break it. Only you can keep it. So as a result of that, I laid in the floor of a Panamanian jail being tortured day and night for 28 days. To the point that I bled every time I went to the bathroom for 5 years because I was not willing to give up the only thing in this world that I had absolute control of.
Was that your hardest experience in that prison in your life?
I don't know. I don't know if we can ever say there's one experience that is harder than other, because probably not. And I'll explain that. When our experiences are based upon pain, it's amazing what this world, it's amazing what our body can sustain. It came to a point where the more they beat us, the less it hurt. So what was my greatest fear and why I threatened Noriega was because I didn't want to lose my mind. So for me, what are the worst experiences? I would have to say, looking at my life and realizing how I had destroyed my parents by the choices I made. I tell people life is nothing but a series of choices and consequences. I was given every opportunity to succeed. Great education, great morals, great family, and I threw it all away by chasing the what I call the pseudo American dream. The more you have, the happier you're going to have. At the end of the day, listen, I know a lot of wealthy people, and when I speak to them or I coach them, I said, look, there was a time when I was making $3 million a month in 1976. Now, 76, 3 million is a lot more than 2023 million. I didn't live no different than when I got out of prison. I had nothing. The only difference was I just had a lot more stuff. Yeah, it's fun. It's exhilarating. When people ask me, what do you miss the most? It wasn't my jets. It wasn't dating gorgeous women. It was the power. That's a drug. That's exhilarating. So, my greatest pain throughout life has been that I took 10 years of my parents' life away, that I was very, very close with my parents. My dad died in my arms. And the fact that to see them visit me day in and day out at different prisons in America and seeing their son, who they had tremendous aspirations for, blow it all away and go to jail. I mean, that was probably, without a doubt, the most painful thing I have ever experienced.
How much of it did you share with your parents or with your siblings at the time? Were you completely like, could you be completely open with them, transparent, or were there parts that
at the beginning with my parents, until I went to prison in 79, they had no idea I was a drug dealer. I owned a lot of companies. I owned construction companies. I owned cattle farms. I owned orange groves. I had a lot of business. I traveled the world quite a bit. They had no clue. Their first clue was the day I got arrested in Panama and brought to U.S. and headed with being the head of the largest drug conspiracy in the world. It was so painful to my dad, he couldn't go to the courtroom. My mother did, because my mother was amazing. My mother was that tough love mother, neither of my parents took a dollar from me. I used to tell my dad, Dad, I got whores living in $1 million houses and you living in a $25,000 house. He said, yeah, but that's the house I bought. And so they didn't approve of what I did. They did not endorse what I did. They did not tolerate what I did, but at the same time, they did not reject me as their son. So my mother would always say, son, what you're doing doesn't please God. And then she would say, well, what do you want to eat tonight? So that type of love. And so they taught me true north, and it's critical for parents to do that, because we need to teach our kids what is the right way, because we deviate, right? It just happens. That's life. But if we teach our kids where north is, when they do deviate, they know where to come back to. So when my parents found out, the day I saw my mom in court, it just killed me, because I know she was as shocked of finding out who her son had become as anybody in the world. I was the American dream. I was the youngest employee in the federal government, working for the Federal Reserve Bank at 17, honor student at the University of Miami. And then I literally within 6 months, I became America's nightmare.
Do you have the same strategies with your children as your mother had with you in terms of tough love that you said?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. One of the first things that I did do with my children is I came clean with them. This is something that's critical. The title of my book is really revealing, because I consider the first element or the first step that human being needs to take if he wants to build a strong mindset and if he wants to be able to achieve great success. We live in a world of secrets, right? Well, even more back then than now, because I call Google the great snitch, and you can find out everything in Google. But we never tell people who we really are, or what we're really going through, or what we're struggling with. So, because we are living a culture of mask, right? It's funny that we're all wearing a mask now. We live in a culture that I'll tell you who I want you to know about Jorge Valdes, and then I meet someone else and I'll tell them the Jorge Valdes I wanted to tell. So nobody knows Jorge Valdes. Well, with my children, the first thing that I did first they came to see me speak a lot, but they were little. As they got older, I made them read my book, because I wrote the book for them. I wanted them to know that, listen, this is who your father was. Your father today gets up early, makes you breakfast, goes to your little league games, you know, drives you to school, picks you up from school. But there's another side of your father that you need to know. The side of your father that he made grave mistakes in this world for which he paid dearly, not only him, but everybody around him. So I want you to know that even though God forgives us and God redeems us, we still suffer the consequences of those actions. So one of the things I used to literally, before I wrote the book, I used to always want, when someone looked at me in the street, I always wondered, well, do they know? What do they know? You know, maybe they were just looking at the color of my hair, you know. But when I wrote the book, it was really liberating because I tell people, until we deal with that, again, as a person of faith and as a Christian, I call it sin, but we can call it whatever hidden secret we have. Until we deal with that hidden secret and we become transparent and repent in a repentful and remorseful way, we'll live in bondage all of our lives. You know, I talk about Lance Armstrong. I think Lance Armstrong missed the greatest opportunity in the world. Because had I advised Lance Armstrong, I would have said, listen, just go there and said, I was a young kid, which is true. Everybody was doing it, which is true. I wanted to win, which is true. I did not want to lose. I wasn't old enough to really make, you know, a correct decision. I made a wrong decision. I sold out. Yes, I used drugs, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life now helping kids not to fall into that pit. I think Lance Armstrong would have gone down in history as not only a great cyclist, but a great human being. But their ego does not allow them to do that. Pete Rose, baseball. I know you're familiar with American baseball. Same thing. Why isn't Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame? They're probably one of the greatest players to ever play because he couldn't come clean about his transgression. And that's the problem with us because our pride forbids us, you know? So we live in shackles. Once we come clean and we deal with that, that's a fact. And many times pay the consequences. You know, when I got arrested the second time, I didn't have to go to jail. I walked away from the cartel 4 years ago. I didn't have to forfeit $1. I could have kept all my millions. But I wanted to change my life. I had made a decision to follow the teachings of Jesus. And I didn't want to, I felt that I just couldn't go on lying anymore. So I forfeited over $40 million to the government and went back to prison, thinking that I might die in prison. But I didn't care because I was really, for the first time in my life, I was free. You know, I wrote an article. I said, I'm 21 years old. I have more money than anyone can ever imagine. I'm dating the most beautiful woman in the world. I have a fleet of jets, $1 million worth of cars, live in mansions, and yet I want to die. And that was the reality of my life. Because in life, when you think that meaning is at the top of whatever it is, you know, when I achieve all this wealth, all this power, all this money, you know, when I can date any woman I want, have whatever I want, then I'm going to be happy. When you get there, and very few people ever get there, and they realize it's not there, then they're miserable. And I can tell you, I've coached many, many high net worth individuals who the world admires. In public, they smile, but inside they're dying. They have a horrible marriage. They have children on drugs. You know, it's a problem out there. I thank God that He's given me favor with people because they feel like in today's world where you can't confide on anyone, you can confide on me. Number one, for two reasons. No matter how bad you've done something, I did it worse. And number two is people know that I laid down in the floor over jail willing to die before I broke my word. So that old saying, your secret is safe with me. You know?
Yeah. What do you think that caused the transformation? Because on one point you say that you had a sort of a God complex where you felt like nothing can happen to you and you've taken a lot of risk. And then on the other hand, the person that I'm speaking right now, I have a feeling that has no ego, that is completely open and like you said, you had the courage to come clean. So was it the suffering that the fact that you had all the power, all the money, but still you were broken inside, or what do you
Yeah,
think the
without a
cause?
doubt. And I think all of us have a yearning for meaning, right? You know, I always wonder. I mean, I had this, for example, I had this thing in my head all my life. We're such a perfect creation. Why are we on this earth? Because, this is how I tell my children to make decisions. When you're gonna make a decision, get a white piece of paper, draw a line to the middle, put pros and cons. If the pros are more than the cons, that's how you do it. So in life, when I put joy and happiness, I mean joy and pain, you realize that you're gonna suffer a lot more than you're gonna have joy in this world. You're gonna bury parents. You're gonna go through tremendous struggles. There might be divorces. God forbid you bury a child. There's a lot of pain in this world. So why such a great perfection of a creation is brought into this earth to suffer? You know, so I've always was trying to find meaning for that. What is the meaning for my life? I'm only here on X amount of years, and then that's it. So therefore, I've always had that doubt inside of me. So forever, my worldview was created when I came from Cuba. My parents having been very wealthy in Cuba, coming to the United States and losing everything, giving everything up because my mother didn't want her children to grow up in a communist regime. So doing that and coming to America, and at the age of 10, my mother got left behind with my father. My brother was 9 and my sister was 5. And all of a sudden realizing that we come to be with God, but we left a mansion and 11 of us are sleeping in the floor, writing down what time we're going to piss because everyone's got to go to work or go to school. So I created a mindset that God did not exist, but it was whoever I was. If I was to have meaning, it was up to me. And then I remember my cousin showing up. He had been in America for a few years, and then he shows up. I never forget 1966, and this was a 1965, 64 candy apple red uh, GTO with a white interior. And when I saw that car, I said to myself, that is it. The day I have that car, I'm going to be happy. And then it's like the rest of the world we live in, right? We're bombarded. You have to have this to be able to be this. You know, we call it the American dream, which is bullshit. I mean, the American dream was the World War II generation. They created the American dream. They created that American dream that they had problems in the marriage, but divorce was not an option. They hated the war, but it was an honor to fight for their country. They'd rather be an hour early than a minute late. They work hard. They educated their children. They saved, and they lived a decent retirement. That was the American dream that many immigrants came to America looking for. Well, that's not the American dream now. The American dream now is if you have X, if the more cars you have, the more women you have, the more houses you have, the more, you're going to be happy. Well, it's false because, like I said, very few reach it. And when they do, they realize it just ain't there. So they live in mystery wondering. You know, it's like why people work so hard. Like I did an event for billionaires, and I ended up by asking a simple question. How many freaking zeros do you need? You know, because I can tell you, people of high net worth, their families is in shambles. So in America, I have an old saying, we sacrifice our health and our family to create our wealth, and then we spend our wealth trying to save our family and save our health. So it's all backwards. So I had that hunger for meaning. I had that hunger. And then when I reached it at an early age and I realized it wasn't there and I was miserable, then what gives? And you know, in front of people, I showed that I was happy. But you see, every day we go to bed and we look up at the ceiling. We wake up in the morning, we look at a mirror, and then we ask ourselves, do we like what we see? And that's one of the things that drove me, that inquisitiveness, to find that meaning to my life. Why was my father happy having been a millionaire, living in a poor house now, driving an old car? and my father ended up making millions in America. And he died with a fake Rolex, fake Cartier watch that cost him $100. And I'm like, why? How can you be happy that I thought my dad was a loser? But it wasn't until, I changed my life and I lost everything that I began to find what was the true meaning for my life. And for me, it was twofold. Number one, my mission is to take my children to heaven with me. If there is no heaven, then we're going wherever we're going to go. But if there is, that's where I want them to go. And number two is to make an impact in someone else's life, to provide hope for people that are hopeless. There's so many people suffering in the world today. I mean, look, in America, we have the highest unemployment rate in history, yet the stock market is through the roof. I mean, what does that mean? Simple. We have such a disparity where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And I see people that make so much and give so little. And I ask myself, what for? To look at the bank account and to say you have X? And at the expense of what? You're miserable? Nobody likes you? Your wife hates you. Your kids probably hate you. But you keep making more zeros because you think that the more you have, the more people are going to, I don't know, the more meaning you have, whatever. I don't know what they think. To me, money wasn't what drove me. I mean, I remember one time my maid asking me to clean, if I could move a sofa I was sitting on in my office, and because she hadn't swept behind it, and I did, and there was a paper bag with $700,000. Now, that was 1978. I mean, I had no idea who had left it there or how much was in it. I know it was 700,000 when we counted it, but it just, money had no meaning at all. And I seen it with a lot of people, and I seen the downfall of a lot of people. Listen, the love of money is not the root of all. Money is not the root of all evil, right? But what is money? It's just a piece of paper. People that say, "Hey, capitalism sucks." Well, without capitalism, we cannot help people that are out there doing mission work. People out there doing, works to help the poor, to feed the hungry. So, but we have to find a balance. For me, the most important thing is to realize that he who much has been given, much is expected. Now, I live with these ideals, right? And someone said, well, they're all bullshit. Oh, that's not true. I said, all right, listen, I'm a gambler. I never gamble in Vegas because I happen to know a very powerful man that built Vegas. And he took me down there and made me look at Caesar's Palace one day and asked me, well, what do you see? I said, I was 21 years old. Great hotel. No. What do you see? I said, sir, a big hotel. Beautiful fountain. And after a while, when I give up, he said, no, what you need to see is I didn't build this by losing money. So after that, I never gambled anymore. But then you gamble with your life, right? You gamble with your life every day. So I tell people, listen, if you're a gambler, if there is no heaven, if all I'm thinking about is all BS, I haven't lost a damn thing, man. All I've done is try to be a better guy and to share what I got with those that ain't got nothing. And as of now, we have sent, as of this month, the end of July, we have sent over almost 30,000 books to prisons across America. Now, each book is read by 10 people. What does it do? We get hundreds of letters saying how it has given them hope. It has given them, I think that people change because they see someone else has changed. So it does that. I do all that with my money. I never asked anyone for $1. We have a foundation totally funded with our income, not anybody's income. And that's what makes me tick.
Is that the Tres Hermanos Foundation?
Correct.
And what does it do? What is its mission?
We've done numerous things. When we built our company, my partners and I got together to determine what made a great company. And we felt that a great company wasn't because we had great technology or great employees, or we were very smart, or great clients, right? Everybody has those. I think what made a great company is one that gives back. So we decided to get 10% off the top. Now, that was a lot of money for us. But we were blessed. We had a private jet. We had yachts. And we did. And with that money, we created a foundation. And what we've done is we've created scholarship for very poor people, kids whose parents are under the poverty level in America. We took a group of kids and we gave them full scholarship to one of the top Catholic schools from kindergarten to 12th grade. So they would change the entire generation. We created programs using triathlon to help kids get off drugs. We had over 300 kids in Cozumel, just changed their life. We built a home for elderly people that in an island that there is no, assisted living facility. We built the only Catholic church inside the United States Penitentiary at Angola, Louisiana, the deadliest prison in America. So, and then of course now our absolute mission is to send 1 million books to prisons.
And what types of books do you send? Bible or?
No, I sent my book.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I took the Narco Mindset that I sent you, and I did a more condensed edition called the Narco Mindset Freedom Edition. And basically, I took out any sex or anything that might be not as productive to someone in prison, and that's what we sent. And we got letters from. I mean, we get chaplains and prison officials begging for 50, 100 copies, and we send them to prisons all throughout the United States. We feel that if we send 1 million books, it'll be read by 30 million inmates, and hopefully it'll give them a chance to change their lives and to come out of prison and make a different choice. And we've seen it over and over again happen. We have to fix the criminal justice system in America. We got to stop the stupid war on drugs, which is the biggest joke ever in the world. And we got to do something about those people. Listen, we either pay to help them or we're going to pay to warehouse them. We're going to pay no matter what. So why not pay to help them so they can come out and make a difference? I just wrote a book called America, Incarceration Nation. And I highlight 5 stories in that book with a friend of mine, Anthony Petrucci. In those 5 stories, I talk about the war in Angola, how he transformed the bloodiest prison in America. I talk about an inmate that was at Angola for 35 years innocent, and DNA, exonerated him. I talk about Jamie Torres, a dear friend of mine, who was dad was making himself drugs when he was 10 years old, stabbed 28 times, but turned his life around, and now he's out there making a difference in street gangs all over where he lives in the Carolinas. And then talk about Jerry Ross, which is the daughter of Michael defendant, so that she can lay out the pain that children of men or women who are in prison suffer. This is not a victimless crime. Everybody pays, and the life of these children is devastated. So with it, we hope that people will read it and realize, listen, we got to make a difference. If not, we're just going to keep going from bad to worse. Because in America, I don't know how it is in Slovenia, but in America, they have no desire to rehabilitate anyone. In America, prison is a big business. It's huge corruption. And all they care is about warehousing men, women, and children. So they set up the laws in a way that people of color, minorities, are set to go to prison. And special interest groups, part of the corruption, and politicians who take money from those people are the ones funding all this and running all this. And again, at the end of the day, it's affecting everybody, because it's not, if the child of an inmate has 80% chance of going to prison himself. The mother goes on welfare, so society has to house her. Taxpayer dollars, which is what taxpayers don't freaking get. And I don't understand why we're stupid enough not to realize, listen, the government who pays anything pays it out of our dollars earned. They're not paying out of their dollars. It's out of our dollars. So we are paying to warehouse men so that other special interest group and politicians get rich. Bottom line.
Is it better or worse than it was decades ago when you were?
Much, much worse.
Worse.
When I was in prison in 79, if you took a prison population, Hispanics and African American made up probably 30%. Whites made up 70%. There was programs to rehabilitate. There was big programs to educate children that came in there. I don't know, maybe 6, 7 out of every inmate that goes into the system cannot read or write. So there were programs to help them get a GED, the equivalence of a high school diploma. There was programs to teach them vocational training so they could come out and earn a living. All that got scratched now. And now the tide switch between African American and Latinos, we make up 80% of the prison population. So America is only 4% of the world's population, but we have 24% of the world inmates. Now, does that mean that we're more criminal than anybody else? Probably a lot of people think so.
Yeah, probably the system is the issue here.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Did you make 2 PhDs while you were in prison, and you said that you learned Greek language, or?
So going back to mindset, so when I go to prison, there was a great possibility I stayed there the rest of my life, because even though when I walked away, the most sentence I could have gotten was 15 years. And because I was not arrested with anything, the most they really should give me was 10 years, which is the equivalent of the time I was under parole that I'm confessing to. Because there was never one wiretap, 1 gram of coke, and 1 grain of cocaine, and 1 compromising picture ever in both times I went to prison. Both times I went under the conspiracy law. So, because I walked away in 87 early, the people that I dealt with kept going. In America, they have a law called continued criminal enterprise, which means you're as guilty for the highest offense committed in the enterprise. So literally, all you could have done is drive a vehicle someplace and get the same amount of sentence as the kingpin gets. The difference is that the kingpin can hire great lawyers, you can't. The kingpin can negotiate with the government, you can't. I forfeited, over $40 million, and that was my cooperation. So I got a reduced sentence. Most people cannot. So my mindset is when I'm going into prison is I can do what the inmates say. George, if you sleep 12 hours, you'll sleep half of your sentence. Or I can say, I'm not going to let the time do me. I'm going to do the time. So my mindset was, I'm in a monastery. I'm here to study. I'm here to learn. Every minute that I'm up is a minute that I'm getting ahead of somebody else that's asleep. I tell my children, every minute you sleep is a minute that someone else is awake trying to be better than you. Every page of a book I read, when I finish a book, I'm that much smarter than when I started the book. So I got up at the same time I always get up, 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I began to read and read and read. There was no one to teach me Greek, so I taught myself Greek because I need it for my biblical studies. And then I got another bachelor's. Then I got a master's. Well, half of my master's, when I got released, I finished my master's. And then when I was released after my master's, I earned a PhD from Loyola University in Chicago. And I was one of 5 Hispanics in the entire country with a PhD in Bible.
Do you still read on a daily basis? Because I do follow some of your videos, and you seem to quote a lot of the great books recently.
Yeah, I read. I'm an avid reader. So the problem is that I see a book I like, and I got to stack that big of books. When I was doing my PhD, I was reading a book a day. So, but I had no other life. I got children. I produce content. I record. I do podcasts. I do blogs. So I do a lot of stuff. But I read a lot. Every day I try to read at least a couple hours because again, it's a habit. And my dad had to leave school when he was in 5th grade. And my dad was one of the most educated men in the world. He never left, never traveled outside the United States. The only place in the world he traveled to was from Cuba to Miami, New Jersey, and back. Never left the country. But my father could talk to you about any country in the world because he was an avid reader. My dad made my brother and I, before we were 10 years old, read the biography of the greatest figures in history, from Alexander the Great, to Jose Fouché. How many people know about Jose Fouché? To Napoleon, to Julius Caesar, to great figures of history, because he felt that, again, that's what he would say. Son, when you finish that book, you are that much smarter than when you open that book. So you can waste your time playing video games or watching TV or watching the news so that you can get depressed and be hateful, or you can just read and be better and learn and, do something constructive. There's a lot of good. Look, I'm reading books from people that whose ideologies are different than mine. Excuse me. I'm reading a book from a person whose ideology is totally different than mine, but it's amazing, amazing. Some of the stuff that he writes about that I admire a lot, that I look at. So a lot of times we want to just write off a book because, oh, that guy's a Republican or he's a Democrat. No, every human being, no matter what, you know, political ideology they subscribe to, has insight. And at the same time, very few books, people don't realize that a lot of books are written, but very few are published. So if a book is published, he's done a lot better than thousands that don't get published.
Do your siblings have the same mindset or the same entrepreneurial spirit? How much of it was because of the parents, and how much is something that's unique to you?
That's a good question because, I got 6 children and they're all very, very different. Very, very different. And my brother had the same entrepreneur mindset as I do, but he always looked upon me as a leader and the leader of our home because I was older. My sister, sadly enough, has had a lot of problems. She got involved with the first husband she met and married. He got her into drugs, and she's never been able to. I mean, she's not doing drugs, but she's never been able to overcome that. And she was brilliant, a brilliant person, but she's never been able to overcome that poor little me mentality, and it just lives in a vicious cycle. And no matter what we do to help her, sometimes unfortunately we can't, because you can't help people that don't want to help themselves. And sometimes some people got to hit rock bottom, even though when you think that they have already hit rock bottom and they'll change, they don't. But you keep loving them and you keep accepting them as they are, and realize that, hey, I'm not the savior of the world. I can't save anybody, but I can love everybody. It's a choice. Like I tell people in marriage, I hear the word, I fell out of love. And I'm like, well, were you in a ladder? Did you climb a ladder and then fell off that ladder? It's all BS. There is no falling out of love. Love is something real simple. We choose to love or we don't. That's it. No more. So when we decide that we love somebody else, see, and the good thing about, or the funny thing about life is that whatever mistakes we make or whatever bad choices we make, it's never our fault, right? Somebody else's fault. Someone made us do that. She made me hate her. She made me leave her. She made me cheat on her. No, you control your actions. You control the way you are. Nobody makes you do anything, So it's different. With my children, I just recently wrote, I published today what I call a compilation of vision. One of my elements in this Narco Mindset journal is vision. I said that one of the reasons that I have been very successful in life, both illegally, creating at the age of 21 the biggest drug empire in the world at that time, and then coming out of prison, dead broke, 40-some years old, creating a national international multi-million-dollar company, is because of vision. I tell people, if you don't have a vision for something, how do you know where you're going to go in life? Well, one of the things that is critical for me is twofold: to have a vision for my children and to have a vision for my marriage. When we don't have a good marriage, we need to ask ourselves, what is the problem? I was divorced 3 times before I met my wife now of 25 years, who I am madly in love with. And I always blamed it on, I picked the wrong woman. I was in the wrong lifestyle. I picked, women that like that lifestyle. But the truth of the matter, they were great women. The common denominator to those failed marriages was me. I kept bringing myself to the marriage, and I was messed up. So finally, when I was celibate for 7 years, and I met my wife, who was just an amazing human being, I learned, and then I had to learn how to love. I had to learn really what love was. So I created a vision for how I wanted my marriage to look like. Well, going back to my kids, since they were little, I had a vision for each kid. And you develop that vision as they're growing up. So for example, and they come, people ask me, how come all your children are so successful? The first four, you spend most of their life in prison, you know, number one. And number two, the last two, half of their life, you were gone trying to create your wealth again. But none of them do drugs. None of them have any addictions. Everyone's got a graduate degree. My oldest son, he's got a degree in marketing, and he's a very successful day trader and a real estate agent in South Beach. My middle daughter, my oldest daughter, I knew she had a caring heart, so I knew she would be a school teacher. Like, that was the love of my life, to teach. So she's got a master's degree in special ed. My middle daughter argued with me so much that I knew she would be a lawyer. So I molded her and steer her that way. And she's a lawyer today for the student loan division in Washington. My middle son always had the same entrepreneurial spirit I had. So when he was younger, I ended up buying him a little, I would call it Blink Clean, which was a little mobile car washing business. And what it taught him is he had to get up early to do customers. It taught him how to handle finances, how to deal with people, reasonable and unreasonable people, how to serve, how to build lasting clients. So today, he is very, very successful CFO, passed his CPA exam on the first shot, and he's a CFO of a tech company. Then my youngest son, very gifted in everything he's done. He could have been a professional baseball player. He could have been a professional golfer, but I realized that his passion was film. And now he's an up-and-coming filmmaker. My youngest daughter, who I'm taking to college now, I just knew that she was the most brilliant. I just knew that she would change the world one day. And at the age of 14, when we asked her, what do you want for your quinceañera? Because I don't know in Slovenia, but in Cuba, for Latins, the 15th birthday of a girl is almost like a bat mitzvah for a Jewish person. Is their passage into adulthood. And very, very important feast. She looked at me and she said, Dad, I've been researching and I want to go to Oxford and study economics for 3 weeks. So at 14, I dropped her at the door of Oxford. As people say, you're crazy. Well, I know her because we have taught her and we have molded her. And now she's going off to college, and she graduated from high school with 45 credit hours. So she'll literally finish a master's and a bachelor. Now her goal is to become a Rhodes Scholar. And so we already have a plan on how to achieve that. She might and might not, but we have a plan. We have a vision for that. So we have a vision for all of them. And that's why they turned out the way that they turned out. Now, if you just let your kids do whatever you want, like, for example, a rule in my house, they hated it, but it was when the oldest person in the house gets up, everybody gets up. Well, bad luck, man. The oldest person got up at 4:30. So I sounded a bugle call. Everybody got up. My son, when I was in the cartel, when I went to prison, my oldest son was 6 months old. When I come out, he was 7. He lived with me those 3.5, 4 years I was out before I went back. And we lived in a multi-million-dollar ranch. We were the richest people in the county. And people would criticize, and they could not understand why their father made him go after school and clean horse manure in the stables for an hour and a half every day. And I used to tell my workers, if I ever see any of you guys do his work, I'm going to fire you. And of course, at that time he was, 7 years old, and like any 7, 8-year-old, he's going to bitch and moan about it. But I taught him, you're not any better than anybody else. And it took many years for him to come and tell me, Dad, the greatest gift you gave me was not my education. It was you taught me how to work hard. My children, my last 2 children, when we worked hard and our company began to grow and grow, all of a sudden my wife and I, who come from poverty, were living in a multi-million-dollar home. We had a jet. We had a 90-foot yacht. we had a house in Mexico, and they went to the best schools. And we struggled a lot because we knew that that life was not real. And we didn't want our kids to believe that that was real. So one day, I sold the company, I left, and we moved to Mexico. I wanted them to see people that miss meals every week, but yet still love God. And it helped my youngest daughter to create a tremendous social conscience. And she's the one that really did the most with the Tres Hermanos Foundation. We're creating the program for the triathlon to get kids off drugs, obesity, and violence. And today she has this mindset, and it's because we decided that we're just going to move them from America. We're going to take them. Yeah, we're still going to live in a gorgeous home, but they're going to go and they're going to have friends that have nothing, and they realize they have nothing. And for Christmas, we never let them have more than $100. We thought, hey, Jesus got 3 gifts. You know better. And for every gift you get to get another older toy, pack it up, and we're going to take it to poor kids. I took my children to visit when my daughter was 6 years old. We spent one Christmas at that penitentiary, and I took my daughter to death row so that she could see people that were good people that had made horrific choices for which now they have to pay with their life. So, you do that, but you got to be involved in their lives. You got to spend time. You got to dedicate time to your children. You got to know what they're doing. You got to know who their friends are. What are their activities? I don't let my kids spend the night anywhere. And I don't let any of their friends spend the night in our house. There's just too much danger out there. And maybe because I come from the world that I come, I'm more protected. But I'm protected in that aspect. But yet at the same time, I let my daughter at 14 in London, and at 15 she went to Colombia to study computer programming, a language. So I trust her. But at the same time, like I had a curfew in my house, 10 o'clock. And even when they got older, they're like, well, why don't you trust us? I say, yeah, I trust you tremendously. I just don't trust the devil. Nothing good happens at night. I tell you, I know, I lived that. So that's my mindset for my children.
So we talked about the vision for your children and for your marriage. What about your personal vision? Do you also have that?
Yeah, without a doubt. At the beginning, my personal vision was to create wealth. Then when I got out of prison, I had a vision to become a college professor and to teach others. Especially, I want to teach Hispanic. There's only 5 Hispanic. At that time, there was only 5 Hispanics in the entire nation with a PhD in New Testament, compared to 5,000 Anglos. So I had a vision, and I worked really, really hard to achieve that vision. And then when I realized I couldn't put 6 kids to college on a professor's salary, I started our company, and then we had a vision for our company, where we were going to go, how we were going to run our company. And then your vision evolves, right? It evolves as you go down the road and you take certain decisions and you make certain choices and you shift, right? The only people that don't shift is the government, right? They keep going north and it's dead end, and they just keep going north because somehow they think dead end is going to end. I call it insanity. But when you don't work for the government, you got to shift, So my vision now is simple, is to make a difference in the world. That the day I die, people realize I did something to make somebody's life better. We've given away millions. We've given as much as we had. I could have had another jet when I left the company, but we chose that our jet was going to be someone's life, someone that just couldn't do nothing for themselves. We don't believe in a handout. We believe in a hand up. We don't believe in giving fishes. We believe in teaching people how to fish, and tell them the importance of, there's people that need help from the government. They are, but I would say 90% don't. I said 90% don't realize that. And today, I wrote another article called "The New Slavery," and I said, you got people now getting X amount of money from the government on top of their unemployment They don't want to go back to work. So what happens is they sit back, and who's the master? The government. So when the master says jump, they're going to jump because they want that extra $600. And they're going to be dependent upon that master. And then they're going to squelch the ability to create, the ability to innovate, the ability to succeed, to provide for their family. They become, just vegetables. Now, if you're a single mom and you lost your job because of this pandemic, and you got a baby because you have a bum husband and you need help, yeah, damn right you need help. Like I tell people in the with this Black Lives Matter movement, they're not going to do nothing with this protest. And it's sad. Why? Because I've seen it over and over again. If we really care about changing the outcome of not only African American, but Latino, we got to start by changing our communities. See what happens, Mitch, the first thing that happens when one of us makes it is, guess what? We move out. Where? To the white guys community that we've been criticizing. And the worst part is that we get a stiff neck. We can't look back, So if we do like LeBron James did, or my dear friend Carlos Beltran and his wife, who took their money and they created a baseball academy so they can help poor kids get an education and have a chance at a major league career. But if they don't get a major league career, because very few ever do in baseball, they will have an education. They will have a college education. So we got to look back, and we got to create a community where we raise our children, not the gangs. Because here's the thing that is interesting. I've been racially profiled in America many times. I remember being 10 years old and being punished in school for speaking Spanish. But I never felt I was a victim. Now, I can't compare myself with the African-American experience. We were not lynched. I guess didn't give them a chance. We were not, didn't suffer the things that they have suffered. But we can continue to live in that past and not change our future. What good does it do if we make every white person like us, and yet 8 out of 10 of us are in jail? How safe is it for our kids when, listen, as a Latino, consider a person of color in America. Yeah, I'm racially profiled in some white community, but I don't feel afraid. I feel afraid in my community. I feel afraid in some African-American community. Not all, but some. And that should be. So what do we have to do? We got to empower the local organizations that are living in those communities trying to make a difference. We got to create better education for these children. They got a crappy education, and you want to give them money, you got to. This is how I would do it. I give money to every child so they can get an education. So they don't have to make a decision between having to work to feed their family or to get an education. And the same thing, and it happens in Latin America with the gangs, with the cartels. Why do they surface? Because most of the money is controlled by a few, and the majority of the people have nothing. So when they have when a child is born and has no opportunity to make it as he's growing up, who becomes his role model? Certainly not a ball player, El Chapo, Pablo Escobar, some of the rappers. Listen, athletes in America, most wealthiest athletes are all people of color. Same thing with entertainers. If we look back like LeBron James does, and some have, and we change those communities, then we start to even the playing field. But if we even the playing field and everything is fine now, everybody's got the same opportunity, except we're in jail. What do? So that's another thing. We need to change the criminal justice laws that are set up to put people of color in jail. 10 grams, 10 grams of crack cocaine, 50 grams of crack cocaine gives you the same sentence as 500 kilos of powder. Now, if you know anything about math, it takes 10 grams of powder to make 10 grams of crack. But who consumes powder? The more affluent. Who consumes crack? It's cheap, and it's in the poor communities.
So, considering that you have all the connections and have met a lot of the politicians, were you ever interested to also become one, or to at least be a part of it? No.
Oh no! I'll be raising so much hell they'll kill me. But see, and that's the thing. I say all this for one reason. especially doing now when everybody's afraid to speak up, right? Because you say something, you're a young man, you up and coming in the world, and if you have a strong opinion about something, most likely, prudently, you're going to keep it to yourself. Why? Because now it's not your opinion anymore. Now we're living in a world in America where your opinion can mean an attack on somebody else. And it's not right. It's not right. It's your opinion. Listen, if I like the president, I'm going to say. If I don't, I'm going to say it too. It's my opinion. Now, I'm 64. I'm self-made. I live a great life. I drive a Rolls Royce. I don't give a damn what anybody thinks about me. I ain't afraid of anybody. I don't give a crap if they got a machine gun, whatever they got. I've had machine guns pointed at me, so it don't scare me. Prison don't scare me. So I'm going to say it. Now, my right that my parents gave up everything they had to secure for me does not give me the right to demean somebody else now. There's a line there. But if I don't agree with something, if I like someone that is African American, I'm going to say it. If I don't like it, I'm going to say it. I'm not going to hold back because of the color. Same with a Latino, same with a white American person. You know, people can say, hey, you discriminate. Listen, discrimination has existed since the biblical times. You know, Jesus was killed by his own people. So, you know, it just the way life is. Is it right? No, of course it's not right. Do we need to protest about it? Of course we need to protest, but we need to have a plan. What are we protesting about? You know what I mean? And what do we want to change? Well, first and foremost, we need to be the change we want to see in the world. If not, it's simply called hypocrisy, right? So now, if we loot, if we rob, what do? We just give ammunition to those that don't like it to say, look, they're animals. I told you, look at them. They're looting their own neighborhood. And they're burning down Target, the store that gives value to the neighborhood. So, you know, it's all crazy. So I tell my children, it's sad. I feel sad for my kids because they're up and coming. They don't have the luxury I have. So they're going to have careers where they can say something wrong and it could end their career. But I told them, never, never demean anyone, love everyone, even those you don't agree with and that you don't think that you like, because there's no honor in liking, in loving someone you like. The honor is in loving the unlovable. I say, but don't ever hold back, okay? Because you're afraid. You can't, you know? You can't be afraid. You got to be, like, I don't know if you've seen the play Hamilton. You know, when at the end, when Hamilton's got to cast a vote for president, and he hates Jefferson, right? He's debated him over and over again. And Aaron Burr is his buddy. He's the guy that, you know, he first met and all that. So he says, I go with Jefferson. I know what Jefferson believes, but no one knows what Aaron believes. And at the end of the day, that's what life is, right? You know, you got to let people know what you stand for. Because if not, you're going to fall for anything. There's no question people know what I stand for. Put it that way.
Who is the executive coaching for, and what do you teach?
I teach, right now, I'm creating a whole new program because I have limited time. I'm 64 and retired. So this is the second wave of my life. So I'm creating a program where it's going to be a monthly membership where people can sign up, and we deal with different very, very important subjects every month, and live with me there, and then people get to ask questions. And then I coach selective people. Later on, I might be able to expand it as we look at the digital era. And I used to speak a lot, so since I don't go and speak now, I decided to do more by digital. So I'm teaming up with a great guy, Michael Weiss of online coaching, and it's going to be, I coach personally. I coach high net worth individuals, very few because I give a lot more time to them, but there are people that are struggling. The other coaching that I'm setting up is more for young people like you, up and coming executive, people that are trying to find their place in the world, that are trying to define, that they're dealing with many, many issues. You know, how do you create success? How do I, whatever it is that you struggle with, or how do I look at how do I begin to build my company? How do I create the foundation for my company? How do I create a vision for my company, my marriage, my wife, my kids, myself? You know, how do I, how am I proactive versus reactive? You know, how do I create a code? How many people you know have a code? We don't listen to it anymore, right? It used to be the mafia that had a code, but I have a code. I've had a code since I was 20 years old. And the code is simple. What everyone will know what I'm going to do all the time. That when I say I'm going to do something, I will always do it no matter what. When I said I won't do something, I will not do it no matter what. How I'm going to run my life, how I'm going to run my relationship, how I'm going to treat you, how I'm going to treat the world. I mean, you have a code, and you develop your code throughout time, you know. And so it's all in development. I only started back in literally in August. In November, there's going to be a big 6-episode series on a streaming service, and it's going to go worldwide, 164 countries, I heard. And I'm featured in the 6 episodes, and it's called Cocaine Cowboy, The Boys. The people did Cocaine Cowboys first. And it's interesting because it's about a kid that grew up with me that I brought into the business. And when I went to prison, I handed the cartel to him. But he became very, very powerful, but ended up killing people, ended up bribing juries. And so I play a central part in that series, but that series is going to lead to one strictly about my life. You know, in my book, in Narco Mindset, I divide the book into three segments. You know, the kid growing up, the drug lord, and then the man who I became and who I am today. So it's a lot of things happening in my life, a lot more. I was very, very happy getting up at 4:30, reading, doing prayers in the morning, and then walking my dog for an hour and a half and praying with my wife, and then going to the gym for another hour. And then by 11 o'clock, man, I was done. And people were like, wow, you must be bored. I said, no, really, I'm having a blast. I can read. But, you know, my wife would not have it. And through some other friends, I realized that, you know, there is a lot that I can give. And there's a lot that I need to share with the world. And especially in times like this when we're really hurting. Everybody's afraid of a lot. And in reality, we need to train and create a mindset that will overcome unbelievable obstacles in our lives, that looks at the world totally different, with power, you know, with no defeat, with love, no hatred. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's all in development.
Were you ever afraid?
Never, not one day in my life. The only thing that I was ever afraid, I'll tell you an example. So I said I adore my father. My father would come, and he didn't know I was in the drug cartel, but I had bodyguards. And my father would come to my ranch, and he built a house there. We bought the ranch years before I started the cartel. Later on, I put a lot of drug money in it, but originally we bought it with mostly a lot of his money. So I had a house there, and he had a house there. I was living, and he loved to watch movies. He would not buy a new car, but he would buy a big screen TV every year that it came out. So we'd sit there, and it'd be about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and he looked over at me, and he'd like, son, you have a busy day tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, Dad, I got quite a bit of stuff to do. He said, it's 10 o'clock. I think you need to go to bed. Now, at this time, I was 22, 23, considered one of the most powerful men in America. And I'd go to bed. And my bodyguards would say, are you afraid of your father? And I said, yeah. I'm not afraid that he's going to whoop me. I'm afraid to let down the man I love and respect the most on this earth. That's what I'm afraid of. And I would go to bed. And I tell my children, you know, my dad didn't have ever the money or the power, anything that I had at that time. But yet, I respected him so much that if he made him happy to tell me to go to bed so I can rest, I went to bed when I was around him. And the rest of it, there's nothing to be afraid of, you know? And what's the worst that can happen to me? That I die? Well, if I don't think that heaven is better than earth, then I need to be worried. But if I think that it is, well, then what the heck? I thought I'd be dead by 25. I'm 64, so I'm living on borrowed time.
Very interesting. Well, I think we're out of time, according to your schedule. So thank you very much for doing this. I think you're gonna provide a lot of value to the entrepreneurs who are gonna watch this, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
it will be my pleasure. It's nice talking with you, and thank you so much for inviting me. I hope to meet you in person one day soon.
Absolutely. If you're ever in Europe,
I go to Europe. I used to go to Europe every year, so we're talking about going next year again.
sounds good.
It'll be
Let's
my
hope that
pleasure.
Corona doesn't kill us in time.
Listen, the
Yeah,
coronavirus is absolutely nothing, man. You're gonna die. The day is your day. The rest of it, live it in power. I mean, do what is sensible and what is logical, but the rest of it, don't live in fear.
hmm,
It's too horrible. I might as well die. To live in fear is better to just die and get it over with. So we'll be fine.
exactly. I agree.
Be
Thank you so
blessed.
much.
God bless you, and hope to talk to you soon again.
You too. Bye.
All blessings. Bye bye.